Jurong Fishery Port gets back to business with some 80% of tenants and workers already fully vaccinated.
Promising results from a study that uses a cocktail of drugs to treat COVID-19. We'll speak to the professor in charge.
And making history at the Olympics, Kimberly, Lim and Cecilia Low deliver Singapore's best ever finish in sailing. You're watching The Big Story, coming to you live from the Straits Times newsroom. I'm Olivia Quay.
I'm Haryanto Dimana. You can subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you never miss a single episode. According to Sustainability and Environment Minister Grace Fu, around 80% of tenants and workers at Jurong Fishery Port are fully vaccinated, with 88% having received at least one dose.
As at yesterday, 1,072 COVID-19 cases have been linked to this cluster, the largest active one here. As it resumes operations, Ms. Fu also gave an update on the new protocols that have been in place since the port reopened last Saturday.
The tenants are progressively opening their stalls, adjusting themselves to the new safe management measures. We have seen them cooperating to the new measures. They understand the need, but SFA is having close discussion with them as we adjust to the new measures. All the stallholders who are back has been tested negative, and they have been put on routine regular testing of 7 days. And all the trade visitors similarly have been tested negative before they are allowed to come in. In the end, it's the joint responsibility of everyone, the stallholders, the workers, the trade visitors, that will ensure the resilience of JFP. And we hope that the entire industry will help us to continue to work together and collaborate so that we can keep our food supply resilient and safe. I'd like to thank all the industry players who have been very cooperative with us, extending themselves when there's a need, and doing all they can to make sure that food supply in Singapore is not adversely affected.
The JFP cluster has led to cases in 43 markets and food centres around Singapore, including Hong Lim and Chong Boon markets.
Low footfall at both these places today, the first day of reopening since being ordered to close more than 2 weeks ago.
And as you can see right here, some units are still shut, with stallholders choosing to reopen only until after the National Day long weekend due to the difficulty of getting fresh seafood. Others were waiting for more regular patrons to be aware that they are now reopened.
Hawkers there are calling for easier access to financial compensation, which should give them $100 for each day of forced closure.
They said the online application process is too complicated and many also didn't know how to start or where to go online.
A quick update on Singapore's vaccination progress. Within a day, July 31st to August the 1st, the percentage of the population who have completed the full regimen increased by 1 point. Indicated by the orange line, 62% of the population, or more than 3.4 million people, have received both doses.
Another addition to our arsenal in the fight against COVID-19 are drug treatments. And researchers here have found a combination of drugs which can be used to treat patients with mild to moderate disease.
The drug cocktail has also shown promising results in effectiveness against the Beta and Delta variants. To derive an optimal combination of drugs with the correct dosages, the team at the NUS's Institute for Digital Medicine had used an AI platform and live virus testing.
The team found that novel antiviral drug molnupiravir combined with anti-inflammatory drug baricitinib could strongly inhibit the virus in lab tests, making it suitable for further clinical evaluation.
This combination could also be easily administered at home, timely as Singapore moves towards an endemic COVID-19 situation.
Here to share more is team leader Professor Dean Ho, who's the director for the Institute of Digital Medicine at NUS Yong Lu Lin School of Medicine. Welcome to the show, Professor. How does the drug combination stack up against other treatments?
So I think what's exciting about this approach is that as part of a pandemic readiness platform, it will hopefully play a supportive role towards the primary strategy of vaccination tracing, and detection. And when we implement it, I think what's important to note is that we're not just looking at one combination, but identify allows us to evaluate a multitude of combinations. And what happens there is this allows us to rank out from the best all the way to the worst combination. And so the core finding of this study was that molnupiravir is a very potent drug from the lab tests upon which multiple combinations can be built. And so when we look at this molnupiravir baricitinib combination, we found that baricitinib did not adversely affect the function of molnupiravir. And so when we look at a comparison, it strongly inhibited the virus in these assays. And when you do a comparison with, say, other single drugs, many of the single drugs that are administered and given at standard doses have a fairly diminished effect. And so when you look at this combination, or even in some cases, some of the single therapies like molnupiravir, you get this much more robust antiviral activity.
Right, Prof. It's exciting news for your team. What's next in the research process for this, and how early can we see it on the market?
I think what's exciting about this Identify platform is that it involves this seamless integration of clinicians, of the technologists, as well as our colleagues at DSO National Laboratories looking at the actual antiviral assays that are being run. And so what's interesting here is the clinicians really do help us recommend some of the initial therapies to put in to the optimization process. And so what we're doing now is we're actually looking with their guidance at new therapies to continuously run this process so that we'll always be ready. When new therapies come out, ones that are in tablet form that could potentially be deployable in the community in a more straightforward fashion, what we want to do is to continuously run the Identify approach. And what we'll have is this rolling database of recommendations to provide the clinicians to decide which combination should be evaluated further for clinical use and or potential deployment into the community. Now, in terms of our ability to roll this out, I think what's great is that the workflow that we've established with all of our collaborators worked wonderfully. And I think right now we have this ability to continuously do this. And so that being said, I think we have a platform that we're ready to offer as a public benefit approach, which means we want to continuously run this and provide information as we go immediately so that we can always be on the ready when we have to evaluate new therapies, or in the future, if new pathogens arise, we'll be able to rapidly, within weeks, find and develop an arsenal to address those pathogens.
That was Professor Dean Ho from the Institute for Digital Medicine at NUS's Yongloo Lin School of Medicine.
Age verification checks on e-commerce platforms are being considered when people buy Axes and other multi-use items, as the government looks to expand the list of regulated weapons here.
But Minister of State for Home Affairs Desmond Tan told the House that authorities need to find a balance because any item can be used as a weapon.
In January, MHA introduced the Guns, Explosives and Weapons Control Act, or GEWCA for short. It will replace the Arms and Explosives Act at the end of this year.
Under the GEWCA, the list of regulated weapons will be expanded and subject to greater controls. In determining which items to include, we have to find an appropriate balance, as almost any item can be used as a weapon, including those used in daily life like kitchen knives and choppers. Highly dangerous weapons like guns and explosives must be tightly regulated, as they can cause a lot of damage. For other mixed-use items like axes, which have normal legitimate uses, we may want to impose some controls, but need to consider carefully exactly what, so that we do not overregulate.
Responding to a question relating to the River Valley High School incident, allegedly involving an offensive weapon bought online, Mr. Tan also disclosed that in the past 3 years, 131 youths under 18 years old have been arrested for possession of such weapons.
And in a response to MP Hertingru's question on media coverage guidelines when reporting on major traumatic events involving minors, Parliamentary Secretary for Communications and Information, Rahayu Mahzam, said the media has shown sensitivity and restraint as seen in the River Valley High School incident.
Safeguarding students' well-being must be the priority. At the same time, though, the media have the responsibility of accurate news reporting, which can help prevent public panic, rumours and fake news.
When the incident took place, the media were not given access to the school compound and were restricted to public areas outside the school. The media's understanding was sought not to press students or staff for interviews or take photographs or videos of them in a way that they could be identified. Doing so would have created additional stress for them at an already difficult time. The media were also encouraged to give the school the space to recover from the incident. In addition, the Attorney General's Chambers, AGC, has also reminded the mainstream media about the legal protections accorded to those under 18 as part of the Children and Young Persons Act, or CYPA. The CYPA does accord protection to minors below 18 years old who may have been involved or had witnessed a crime. So if any mainstream or online media, or for that matter anyone in his or her own capacity, ends up publishing any information that identifies the minor, there is legal recourse to take that offender to task.
School start times also on the agenda today, with Minister of State for Education Sun Xueling saying the ministry has commissioned 2 research studies looking into factors affecting students' sleep duration and quality.
International research has established that amount and quality of sleep is influenced by multiple factors, such as circadian rhythm, exercise, and sleep habits. MOE has also recently commissioned 2 research studies on the impact of factors affecting sleep duration and sleep quality of our students in Singapore. This will help us better understand how later school start times could contribute to students' longer sleep duration. Currently, schools start no earlier than 7:30 a.m. Schools have the autonomy to adopt a later school start time, taking into consideration factors such as parents' feedback, school end time, impact on after-school and inter-school programs, transport provisions, and traffic situation around the schools. MOE will consider the results of the local and overseas research, apart from whether school start time should be delayed.
In a supplementary question, MP Lim Biao Chuan suggested that rather than later start times, schools should encourage parents to get their children to sleep earlier.
Ms. Sun replied that yes, delaying start times may not translate to an increase in sleep duration.
They're an important factor. A local study by Professor Michael Chi in 2016 showed that a 45-minute delay in school start time resulted in a 10-minute increase in sleep time for students from one school in Singapore. An overseas study in Seattle, 2018, reported an additional of 34 minutes of sleep when school started later by nearly an hour. And that's why we have commissioned the 2 studies to understand the matter, the topic better. And Mr. Lim Biao Chuan has mentioned a very important point, which is that we need to work closely with parents so that the students have good sleeping habits, good sleep hygiene.
Kimberly Lim and Cecilia Low finished 10th in the 49er FX medal race out of 21 overall in the event, which was won by Brazil. Now, it's Singapore's best finish in sailing at any Olympic Games. Even before they hit the water today, Lim and Low had already made history by becoming Singapore's first sailors to earn a place in the Olympic medal race. Sports correspondent Zali Abdul Aziz with more.
It was the first time any Singaporean sailor had qualified for the medal race at an Olympics, and their 10th overall placing out of 21 boats also marked the best performance by a Singaporean sailor or sailing pair at these games. They were super satisfied with their performance. I spoke to Kim and Cecilia at the mix zone, and they were super satisfied with their performance. They did say they could have done better if they had adopted a more adventurous, aggressive approach instead of sticking to their normal conservative one. But they had zero regrets and they said they were super happy with how their campaign turned out in the end.
Our paddlers pushed hard as well in their women's team quarterfinal against China, but they were no match for a side that hasn't lost in this event since the 2008 Olympics. Yu Mengyu, Feng Tianwei and Lin Ye succumbing to a 3-0 defeat to end Singapore's table tennis campaign. With Yu and Feng unlikely to compete in the 2024 Games, sports correspondent David Lee writes that perhaps the Singapore Table Tennis Association should consider restarting its foreign talent recruitment if Singapore is to remain competitive at the elite level. Well, you can read that story at straitstimes.com.
That's also where you'll find complete coverage of Team Singapore at the Games. Visit our microsite straitstimes.com/Tokyo Olympics.
COVID-19 updates overseas before we go. Malaysia reported 17,105 new cases today, with Selangor still the state most severely hit. 3 other states plus Kuala Lumpur recorded over 1,000 new cases. On the vaccination front, around 30% of adults have received the 2 doses. And in a Facebook post today, Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin said a motion to debate and annul Malaysia's COVID-19 emergency ordinances will be tabled in September's Parliament meeting.
And authorities in Wuhan today announced they would test the city's entire population for COVID-19. This comes as it yesterday reported 7 locally transmitted infections among migrant workers, breaking a year-long streak without domestic cases.
Well, those are our top stories for today. For more news and videos, visit straitstimes.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel by hitting the red button below.
Once again, I'm Haryanto Diman with Olivia Quay. Join us tomorrow for more stories on The Big Story.